tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So I wish you all well and growth and goodness and blessings, all of you who've gathered here for this afternoon session of our Dhamma retreat together. I'm looking at the screen, looking at all the individuals gathered here on the video screen. It looks like over 50% are female, about less than half are male, and the age looks to be mostly over the age of 40, so you'd say middle-aged, not many young people on the Zoom screen. And so we see that the people gathered here are people who have passed through life experience to a sufficient degree. Perhaps they have a family already, have a wife or a husband, or have children. You've passed through a young age. There's this one monastery in Ayutthaya province in Thailand, and every month, every single month of the year, they have a Dhamma retreat. And the people that gathered for that retreat are usually more female than male. And the age of people that go on these retreats, usually over 45 years old. So it's similar to this online retreat that we're doing. And previously I've heard the abbot of that monastery say that the age of retreatants is usually between 50 and 60. But now we see that it's a bit younger. A bit younger than that now. So that means that the people these days are getting to know about Dhamma more quickly, or having interest in Dhamma more quickly, having interest from a younger age. Before, people that came to practice usually be their mother and father, bring them to the monastery, bring them to practice and do merit. But now in the present, people might be interested more quickly in the Dhamma, because we see that the communication these days is faster and more convenient. So we can meet with Dhamma teachings more easily, more conveniently. And we can gather together and practice Dhamma online as well. But if we look at this another way, we can say that most likely the other side of this is that suffering also seeks us out more quickly and more conveniently as well. And from a young age, we get more suffering, and we get it more quickly as well. So this is according to the development of society developing in terms of material things, in terms of technology. So we've heard monks say that if we don't use this material wealth and technology with mindfulness, then we'll get suffering. We'll get suffering more quickly and more easily. It's like if we look at monks in the forest monasteries before this modern technology, they had little to no communications equipment. So the opportunity to know about things in the world was very little. If there was some kind of very big news, then the abbot might tell them in a Sangha meeting, for example, like the tsunami in Thailand. But in the present day, it's not like that. The communication is much faster, more convenient. So we know a lot of news It's like the monks in the monastery these days. In the past, they didn't know about the news, didn't know about these things. But nowadays, it's more necessary, or people use these phones more often. And if we use them without mindfulness, then we receive a lot of information from the world. And some of it is necessary, some of it isn't necessary. And it gives rise to a lot of moods and sense impressions in the mind. It gives rise to suffering for us. This happens even in the monastery. The body doesn't leave the monastery, but we still get the knowledge and information from the outside world. And this is the cause for us to feel suffering more quickly. And also, we may not be very old yet, or still at a young age, we experience suffering more quickly. So we see that we have this development in society, this material development, and we receive a lot of information, again, some necessary and some not. We get that information, we get the feelings associated with it. And these things make our interest, make our mindfulness flow out into the worldly dhammas. That's what happens usually. And sometimes it is necessary, but we also give ourselves periods of time, like this 9-day retreat, where we put down some of those things, put down this information, these impressions from the world, in order to train our hearts and minds, to bring our minds to stillness. So we can do this at least some of the time, to put away a period of time like these 9 days, to give us time to contemplate, to bring about strength and energy of mind. And sometimes we still experience these 6 senses, and the mind follows after the objects of these senses, like sound, sight, smell, touch, and so on. And we can compare it to when we're not on retreat, and it can become more clear the effect of bringing the mind to train more intensively. Because when we come to practice the Dhamma, when we come to train our mind like this, in the beginning it's hard to bring the mind to stillness. So we have all these memories and sense impressions that we've stored up from before. And these sense impressions follow us into the retreat. Then on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th day, we've already put down a lot of these worldly things. In this period of time, we're able to see the fruits of that the mind gets more stillness and more peace. Because we're not receiving all these sense impressions. They're not as many as before. So this is the benefit, or one of the benefits of Dhamma practice, of undertaking the 8 precepts. So this helps us see the fruit of Dhamma practice more quickly, and we can compare it with times when we're not on retreat. We really see the difference there. So this is one of the qualities of Dhamma practice on retreat. So this is a time where we should have to practice and train to be with our own mind, to observe the proliferation of our minds, to try to bring the mind to peace and stillness, to give strength and energy to the mind, to bring the mind to just one thing. So we sit in meditation, do walking meditation. And it's just like Venerable Ajahn Anan taught this morning in his Dhamma talk, that another part of our Dhamma practice on this 9-day retreat is the listening to the Dhamma. And one of the benefits of listening to the Dhamma is it's able to bring our views into line with right view. to give rise to right view. And we use that right view to contemplate when the mind is still and peaceful in samadhi. So we see that sometimes we feel light and at ease, the mind is relaxed, the mind is still, and it's easy to contemplate. Or we have the mind be still while we're listening to Dhamma, and then we're able to understand what's being said clearly. So this is part of the practice of listening to the Dhamma, to give rise to right view in order to use that right view when the mind is still. We can bring up some Dhamma points to contemplate when our mind is quiet, to contemplate according to right view, to give rise to understanding, a deeper understanding of the teachings that we've heard before. So that which we've heard before becomes clearer with the still mind. So this is one of the benefits of listening to Dhamma talks. So sometimes our mind is still and peaceful easily, but if we have wrong view there, we use that wrong view to contemplate, and this will take us on the wrong path. So it's important that we listen to the Dhamma from the great teachers, that we have the opportunity to do that in order to know the right way, to know the Dhamma according to the great teachers, to use to contemplate for ourselves. So this is important in our Dhamma practice, in our training in peace and mental cultivation. It's listening to the Dhamma. Just like this morning, if we don't listen to the Dhamma, then maybe we don't understand clearly. And sometimes we hear things in the Dhamma talk that we haven't heard before, like this morning's talk about convention and liberation, or samuti and vimutti. Ever since we're born, we experience the conventions of the world. The conventions arise in the mind, and we cling to them and attach to them for a long time already. And we try to escape from that. And this is our goal. We can also say another way to understand the truth of this. So this is what was taught this morning, that the goal is the realization or understanding of not self, that everything is empty. This is the goal we set for ourselves, the goal that we are endeavoring to walk towards. And it's for certain that we'll have difficulty on this path to try to understand these teachings deeply and truly. It's like a small child or a child in elementary school, a young child. And if someone gives that child a test from a university, then it'd be very difficult for the child to understand. The child really wants to answer the questions, but doesn't know how. It's difficult because this is something new for that child. It's things that they've never heard before. Or maybe they've heard about it before, but the mind's just been stuck in its habits and clinging for many lifetimes already, for a long time. Or we can just look at just this one life ever since birth, the mind clinging and attachment in the mind. It's like myself, before I ordained, experienced a lot of suffering. And these teachings were things I hadn't heard before. About ignorance, craving, and attachment. I didn't know about them, how they were, how to contemplate them, or how to abandon them, how to practice with them. I just thought in a way that was conducive to more and more suffering. My mind would circle around like this over and over again, suffering more and more all throughout the day. I didn't have the memory or understanding or the knowledge in order to help me escape from this situation. All I had was the depressed mind and the suffering in it. So we see that this is something very beneficial to listen to the Dhamma, to hear things that we haven't heard before, or things we might have heard before we'll understand more clearly. We see that the teacher tries to explain it in different ways, to explain it more clearly. It might be the same topic or the same story that we've heard many times before, but the teacher is seeking a way to explain it in a new way or different way, as if explaining to a little child to help them to understand, to help give them a way to cure, fix their problems, to improve. So this is the teacher having loving kindness for us. And it's like was said before, bringing the mind to stillness and setting the heart to listen to the teachings, then things that have been heard before can be understood more deeply. So these are the different benefits of listening to the Dhamma, 5 different benefits. So when I first came to Wat Mapchan, the very first day, I went up to evening chanting here and was able to get the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma of Ajahn Anan. This was the first time I'd ever listened to a live talk from a great teacher. And so I had the opportunity to set my heart to listen to this talk. And before this talk, my mind was feeling very hot and agitated, having problems and having wrong view. But my mind was listening to the Dhamma on that occasion. And this was the very first time I got to listen to Ajahn Anan give a talk. My mind felt very cool and at ease in such a way that I can't even explain it with words. I can't recall the exact Dhamma teachings that were said that night, but I, to this day, can remember clearly the feeling in the heart listening to the Dhamma of Ajahn Anan that night. My mind felt very cool and refreshed in a way that can't be put into words. One could compare it to as if my mind was like a little tree, and the Dhamma that Ajahn Anan was giving was like giving shade and water to that little tree. The feeling was that little tree was very dry and not in good shape, and the Dhamma talk was giving water and refreshing shade to it. So this was a benefit of listening to that talk for the first time here at Wat Mapchan, listening to the Dhamma, setting my heart on it, and having this experience of coolness and freshness arise in the mind. So this may not happen every time we listen to a Dhamma talk. So we have to train the mind in peace and samadhi as well, to train the mind in stillness, to give the mind strength and energy in order to abandon the 5 hindrances, to abandon those mind states that are obstacles in the mind with listening to the Dhamma. So these are some suggestions or thoughts to share with you all on this online retreat. All of you have gathered from various countries around the world, have this opportunity to cultivate strength and energy of mind, to study the Dhamma, to practice, to reach the goal that the great teachers teach about. So every step we take, every step closer, or every step we take, we get closer to the goal. And if we don't give up, if we don't retreat, we will reach that goal for sure. So may you all grow in Dhamma and grow in blessings.